Tom, I know you've been messing around with HPA, but you don't have to wear a dye mask.
Oh, mate. Well, I'm getting all confused recently.
I know you're changing your entire direction. I think you've forgotten where you came from, mate. I think you've forgotten your roots, and today I think we need to look at our roots.
Welcome back to AATV. I'm your host, Tom Anvil Hibberd, and I'm here today with Gareth, Gadge, Harvey.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about our roots in Airsoft and how Airsoft has kind of changed in 20 years. But we're mainly going to look at two examples of Airsoft replicas.
So we both started playing about the same time, around about 2000, 2001, when we were working together.
Yeah, I can never remember the date, but something like that.
It's very early 2000s, and back then there was hardly any of the sites you get now. But more importantly, you didn't have the choice you get now. So essentially, if you wanted a gun that worked, Tokyo Marui was your only option. I think there was a few classic armies knocking about, but while they're really good now, back in the day, you either got one that was jam-packed full of grease, or one that was dry as a bone.
Oh, it's made of cheese.
Yeah, and it was a real lottery whether you got a working gun or not.
So Classic Army bought the first kind of metal-bodied
Yeah.
AEGs into the world, or certainly into the UK. It was quite common. Before that, though, Gadge wants to... It was all about Tokyo Marui, and at that point, they were all the long arms were all plastic.
Pretty much. I mean, like, this has got a few metal components like that top gas part there and this top cover. But the actual stock, the receiver, the front furniture, it is all plastic. I mean, it's quite durable, but you didn't have any other options.
So this is how old?
I bought this in 2001 when our old team, the LFO, went and played Russian mercenaries at a Sterling Services Milsim.
Yeah.
And we all bought AKs for it, and I hated AKs at the time. I only bought one just for that game, and I ended up loving it. But they were quite good at the time as an open day gun because you had a 300 BB high cap, or was it 600? I think actually 600, yeah. And you could get like a 3,000 milliamp battery in the stock. And before lipos, that was a real boon.
They were really popular as sight high guns, yeah.
And
so I noticed yours actually, quite remarkably, for a Marui AK, actually has the stock plate on.
Those litter airsoft sites around the UK in their hundreds. If you ever find one of those in the wild, it's a rare piece. But the interesting thing is, I think, Tom, is that this gun is 20 years old. Yep. But the guts inside it, apart from a few minor changes, it's still got like Marui version 3 gearbox that everyone copies.
Yep.
The fact that like a new AK will still take the magazines that this came with at the time.
Yep.
And there's been refinements that we'll look at in a bit, but essentially they kind of got it right mechanically. I mean, this hasn't skipped a beat in 20 years.
No, and so you've basically never been inside that either.
It's never been opened up. It's never had a service. It's been used in no exaggeration, probably over 200 airsoft games. Played with it twice a month at Phoenix and other sites for at least 3 years.
Yeah.
And then it's done every single milsim where I played, I don't know, a Soviet Afghan War one or whatever, until I got a more modern AK.
You got that E&L, didn't you?
Yeah, I got my E&L.
So it's kind of really fascinating. Now, bear in mind at that point as well, they were all quite low powered.
Yeah, I think this is about 290 FPS on a .2.
Yeah, so they were quite between 270 and 290, so well under one joule on a point. And we only really shot 0.2 gram BBs. If you used 0.23s or 2.5s, you were like dead posh back then. And now we basically consider I personally consider 0.28 as a minimum of a BB to shoot. But it's really quite remarkable. So let's compare and contrast to something a bit more modern.
That's an LCT AKM, isn't it?
LCT AKM, which is pretty much all steel, all wood. Not completely brand new, but it does have modern electronics in it. So it does have a gate MOSFET, gate tie-in built inside as well. But the difference is quite remarkable. But they're also it uses the same gearbox, uses a version 3 gearbox. You could almost certainly take the version 3 out of that,
drop it straight in,
and drop it straight into this, which is quite amazing. You know, it's largely the same gun. They break down, they come apart slightly differently, but they would.
I think the big differences for me is the amount of actual metal used in it to give it more of a real gun look, and even the way it's machined. So you get this, you can see those machining lines there. And also the fact that rather than using plastic wood, which does exist on some models, they've actually gone for like a laminate wood, which is actually spot on accurate.
The wood is really good on these.
So you can understand originally in Marui they had to use plastic receivers because of Japanese toy gun laws. They weren't allowed to do metal ones.
It was actually a bit of a gentleman's agreement.
Really?
Yeah, you couldn't have a metal pistol, absolutely banned. And there was a bit of a kind of gentleman's agreement in Japan that they wouldn't make metal receiver long arms as well. But it was legal, but they wouldn't do it.
But they could have done the wood though, which is the interesting thing. They went for this very. It's not a bad wood effect, to be honest. Like, you know, when these were new from a distance.
Actually, it's better now. It's scuffed up.
Yep, they actually don't look that bad. I mean, that's not going to fool anybody. Like if you were, I don't know, Mrs. Miggins, as we say, she'd look at that and go, "That looks a bit like a toy gun." That I think she'd think it was a real firearm.
Now, interestingly, they're still using plastic wood. So even on their brand new recoil AKs, which do have metal receivers, they're still using plastic wood. They're just really good at it. Yeah. It's just what they do. They just don't go into this degree of wood. But LCT use real wood, and it's real laminated wood. Sometimes you get with some of the lower end Airsoft AKs, you get stuff like pallet wood.
Yeah.
Pallet wood furniture, and it just doesn't look right.
Well, my E&L, I actually bought genuine AK-74 furniture to put on it. I took the old E&L stuff off, and I could not tell the difference between the two. I didn't know which one was a genuine piece of Soviet hardware and which one was a Chinese-made bit of, like, you know, laminate.
And we've both got actual AK slings on.
Yeah, this is quite a late East German model.
Yep.
And that's a Soviet one, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, they've kept all the same features, but you'll notice things like those ladder sights are actually painted like most real AK ones are, whereas these are quite... They kind of look about right, but you always get the feel that Marui did things from photographs rather than from actual models a lot of the time, because there are just little bits that aren't quite as well done as they are in later models. Like you've got this nice little smash trade, you know, that's quite nice. And
yeah, bear in mind this is a Type 3 AK machine receiver.
Yeah, we're not comparing exact like for like.
And this is an AKM, so later, the modernised stamp receiver versions. But and this one has the fake bolt kit on it, which is quite nice.
And this was a far more basic, just on a spring slide. That's it's very rudimentary.
And then this battery in the stock.
Now, what I think is interesting though, Tom, was ages ago when you and I both worked for print media, we did a bit of an experiment because we had about 8 different models of AK between us from different manufacturers like Cybergun, Marui, E&L, LCT. And we put them in a fairly static shooting position, and we did a very limited test at 10, 15 metres? 10 metres. And we found that the best grouping we got was this 20-year-old
If I find the data, I'll put it up. I should be able to find it in an email somewhere, because it was printed. And I'll show you the grouping side. But yeah, this did really well. When we did my upgraded AK-105, we shot my AK-74, we shot a Cymer AKS-74U, and the Marui did the best, which was remarkable. Even though it was wobbly to shoot, it still punched.
I think it had something like a 2-inch group or something like that, didn't it? Whereas the E&L was getting like 2.5 or 3 inches.
We'll have a look at it.
It was crazy to look at.
Absolutely bonkers. So we've I think the crux really, price.
Hasn't really changed that much.
No. So
that was about £300. I think I got it from Airsoft Dynamics, which is a name from the past.
Yeah.
I remember when I bought my first AG from Phoenix Airsoft, it was about £300. And for a good AG, that seems to be still the benchmark price.
Yeah, I think these have got more expensive in the last few years, but these are still around £300 to £400.
But if you give it with inflation, this probably would have been closer to £400 20 years ago.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same price, and you get
so much
more for your money these days. It's really is quite remarkable. Power-wise, this stock was about 340. I think it's still doing about that now. So you get a bit more power. The actual kind of specification of the gearbox is much higher.
Well, even the hop-up will lift a heavier weight. I mean, this would struggle with anything over a 2.5.
But LCT is a notoriously bad stock.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
you need to go. Well, it's the classic. They're downgraded to meet UK specs, so the hop rubber's too hard, and it can't lift the BBs. It's really, really normal for many AEGs coming to the UK. When they're downgraded, the hops aren't very good because the rubber's too hard, because it's meant for lifting BBs going much faster.
The other thing worth noting about it as well, so when you bought that from LCT, that was one of maybe 8 or 9 different models you could choose from with an AK.
Tons.
Absolute tons. When Marui brought this out in 2000 or whatever, there was a folding stock AKS version.
Yeah.
And then everyone went crazy about a year later when they brought out the Beat Spetsnaz, totally made up kind of AK
That was another higher gun special.
Oh, totally, yeah. Cause like tiny gun, big stock, big battery. But the choice you have in airsoft now is incredible. So I remember I wanted an AKSU,
Yeah.
and I had to build one. And I had to get a classic Army metal body, a real AKSU stock, drop a Marui Beta Spetsnaz front end and gearbox in. I had to...
Did you use Meccano to stitch it all together?
Well, do you know, I was tempted to, but I'm not a HBA expert, so I had to leave that alone. But even if you see, like, we've got the old style huge indent there.
Yeah.
Now, Marui used that on all of their models for absolutely ages.
Yeah, same plastic. Yeah, same
and I
element.
wanted an I wanted a more of a AK-74 indent for my AKSU.
Yeah, and they would have a stand lower.
So I had to get green stuff from work, make little indent prints out of a former, and then just file it all down so it looked right. And that's because there just wasn't the choice.
Yeah, and now there's a remarkable amount of AK models. They do something like it's ridiculous. You can have anything you want from any of the countries really.
You have Bulgarian ones, Romanian ones.
Yep.
You can have modern furniture.
Yugo models as well. Really quite amazing. So I think we've come a long way in 20 years, Gadge, but actually we kind of haven't. In this, still using the same version 3 gearbox.
The hop-up's the same on both of them. It's still a slide bar hop-up.
Still the same hop-up model. I mean, I've talked to a few manufacturers, and they still see Marui really as the kings and the inventors and the leaders in the market. A lot of people don't think that because of the kind of the power restrictions and everything else. But these guys really are the innovators, and they were massively the innovator 20 years ago.
But you can still buy that model. So, Cyma still sell this model. And when I worked for ASG, I'm pretty sure we had an ASG version of this model, reverse engineered version.
I'm pretty sure you can still buy this from TM right now.
The same model?
Same model right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. So what was the first airsoft gun that you bought? Let us know down in the comments. It'd be really interesting to hear. And how long ago was that? So I've been Tom Anvil Hibberd.
I've been Gareth Harvey.
Thanks for watching this episode of AATV. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can join us on Patreon for a regular subscription to keep this channel as independent as possible. If you want to do a one-off payment, you can tip us on Buy Me a Coffee, the price of visiting a high street coffee shop. You can use our Amazon affiliate link or buy one of our fantastic t-shirts. Most importantly, like, share, subscribe, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.